Are you reading the tarot wrong? Let's find out. I'm Sharice Williams, author, tarot reader, and paranormal investigator. And I got my first tarot deck when I was 13. So I've been familiar with the cards for a little while now. And there is one thing that I have found that is kind of the key to unlocking reading tarot in a way that feels authentic and fluid. And that is the importance of utilizing your intuition when it comes to the cards. This may sound kind of self explanatory, considering the tarot cards are a divination tool and divination is inherently intuitive. However, you'd be surprised, and maybe this is even you, of the amount of people that get so fixated on the meanings of the cards that they kind of push their intuition to the side or even ignore their intuition outright. Now, I'm not saying it is not important to know the traditional meanings of the cards. It certainly is. It absolutely is. We can look at the traditional meanings of the cards as kind of the foundation to your reading, the foundation to your knowledge of the tarot. However, you don't need to wait until you have every single card memorized before you can start reading tarot and reading it confidently and reading it well. One of the ways that you can do this is by looking at a card. We'll look at this card, for example. Sometimes the tarot could be speaking literally. So the traditional meaning could be, tending to the things that you have planted figuratively. So tending to your goals, continuing to work hard at them, nurture your goals, don't give up yet, keep feeding into that. However, we could also take this literally as the tarot saying, hey, it's time to plant some seeds, actual seeds. It's time to grow a garden, like get some plants. Now, if this came up in a reading and you saw this card and you were like, okay, I know what kind of maybe the traditional meaning is, but I'm also feeling like this is really saying to plant some actual seeds, to go to the store and buy a new plant. But that's silly. That isn't what this card means. So I'm not going to say it. Meanwhile, it is a message that the person actually needs to hear. It's kind of shocking how many times I have done tarot readings for people and I've gotten kind of off the wall messages intuitively that almost seemingly have nothing to do with the card. Obviously, the plant example or buying seeds is pretty spot on with this card. However, there's been plenty of times where the message I'm getting kind of has nothing to do with the card. Maybe it's just I'm zeroing in on a particular color or another symbol on the card, and that sparks something intuitively. And I used to, early on in my readings, I would hold back and not relay that message. But then I started to say, you know what, screw it. If this is coming to me, it's coming to me for a reason, regardless of what the cards are saying. And wouldn't you know, every time that I have relayed those messages that seem to be kind of off the wall and have nothing to do with the cards, that is usually the part of the reading that the people respond to the most. Another example of looking at a card and maybe zeroing in on something within the card more intuitively versus what the actual meaning is. So if we look at these two little doggies on the card, traditionally this card doesn't really have anything to do with two dogs or a dog. When you look in tarot card books and you look up the meanings of this card, generally it's not going to be really talking about dogs. It's going to be talking about legacy and retirement and family lineage and that kind of thing. But maybe you are really zeroing in on the dog. Lean into that because you may be surprised at what this is actually trying to tell you. Now, you could take this as meaning there is something that you need to know about an actual dog, or you could look at what does a dog or even a white dog symbolize to you? Does that have any personal meaning to you? And how can you relate that to the reading? And finally, another example of really utilizing intuition. So I was on a guest on a team's paranormal investigation, and we did this was one of my favorite ways to utilize tarot ever, and I'm going to be utilizing it a lot more on investigations. Anyway, it was basically hide and seek and utilizing a spirit box and somebody that was kind of sitting in one of these buildings. There were a bunch of buildings on the property. I had to utilize my tarot to find the person. Finally, one of the last cards that I pulled was this card, and I really was focusing. My intuition saw the lantern and was like ping 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 ping, like pay attention to this. Had I ignored my intuition, I wouldn't have come to the conclusion I did. The conclusion was that the person was in the railroad building, an old railroad building, because this was reminding me of a railroad worker's lantern. The hermit card has nothing to do with the railroad. It has nothing to do with railroad workers traditionally. But had I ignored that, I wouldn't have thought, railroad worker. There's that building. And we went into the building, and what you know, the person was there, and there were a ton of these old lanterns. So that's just kind of a fun example of trusting your intuition. So, are you reading the tarot wrong? Probably not if you are really incorporating your intuition. So trust the vibes that you're getting, even if they differ a little bit from the cards. And honestly, I think that that makes you a much better tarot reader when you really combine the foundation of the traditional meanings with embracing your intuition. All right, have fun.